Everybody, Brian Good here. A quick update on Storm Talk, and I'll probably have to switch over to more of a more updates on Grab and Go, and or the live blog will be activated because we get a little busy. It's hard to do these videos; they take a while to get uploaded and sent out. A couple setups here. First off, the cold front. Actually, the cold front itself is back into this area. There's another front back here to the west that we have to deal with for the cold air on Wednesday. But we're having those. The warm front has moved through. We're getting these elevated thunderstorms now in the Louisville area. Again, these are elevated. These are not severe, but some lightning and thunder, some heavy rain as these pass through the Louisville area the next few moments. More sun trying to break out to the south, and so I think we still have a good chance to heat things up into that record territory in the upper 60s and lower 70s. And then the supercells are about to initiate here just to the west of us along the Mississippi itself. All right, the outlook has not changed much. Still an enhanced risk, basically west of 65 and south of 64. Still believe this is the area of most concern, and then later on tonight, it may shift to more like this for the main concern area for severe weather. I'm not still sure on the Louisville part of it. I think it should be a little more slanted if I had to draw it any differently, but nevertheless, that's the way it's looking. We're close to the event now where it's ongoing. It's no sense getting picky. Just be alert and be aware. All right, wind advisory is in effect. The latest alert, though, is a tornado watch. It goes to about Evansville and to the west of our area until 7 Central Time. Once we get to later on this evening, I'm sure there will be another watch issued for central Kentucky and perhaps even southern Indiana. That won't be probably until the 6 or 7 o'clock hour before they will issue that watch based on their habits in the past. But as soon as we get word on when that could be, if it changes on timing, we'll let you know on that. All right, here again is the radar trends. You see these thunderstorms moving through. Again, these are elevated, not severe. Worst case scenario, maybe some pea-sized hail to some of that, but most of it is going to be just some downpours and some lightning as they pass on through. You see the sun's back out to the south, and that is why I think we still have a chance to get in the record territory later on. Two models I want to show you. Here's the RPM model. First off, already, we're 62 degrees. This model says 57. It's already underestimating the overachieving that we normally see in warm air advection scenarios. So we're right on track to get, again, into the upper 60s, lower 70s, based on what normally does happen here in wave country. And it's picking up on these elevated thunder showers, thunderstorms along the warm front, sees the break, and then it gets into more of the action as we head into this evening, 8 o'clock. It looks a little more linear to the west. I think this will be a little more cellular, but we'll see how it plays out. And then it looks a little ugly here about 11:30. So timing has pushed back a little bit for the main line, but one caveat to that is sometimes when these things get organized into a line, you can add an hour to it as far as speed. So it could be as early as 10:30. Either way, close to the 10 to midnight time frame, there's going to be a line coming through, and this is why I think we shift more into southern Kentucky for a higher threat, for a little bit of a wiggle or a kink in that line for an isolated tornado threat. A little more iffy here across Indiana, but not entirely out of the woods either. But straight line winds, I mean, this year is not going to change any as it passes on through here, so the wind potential is still going to be around, and then after midnight, it is out of here. Here is the other model, the HRR model. Doesn't show the temps, but it does a good job. And I like how it's handling the situation so far with these renegade showers, the warm air advection. I notice what it's doing. At 5 o'clock, it's trying to develop some cells to our west. Now, keep in mind, any thunderstorm cell that tries to make a run at us in the afternoon time period is going to run into a situation where you have less instability and more of a cap. So they're going to become elevated and weaken as they approach. And you can see that trend all the way through at least 6 o'clock happening. Meanwhile, to the west, it gets ugly. Isolated supercells, tornadoes, certainly impossible. Large hail kind of a scenario. And then it matches up with what we saw with the RPM model, where it becomes a little more linear. In fact, as we head into the time period here of around 11:30, very similar time period where we start to see some showers, thunderstorms congeal more into a line. Any kinks we see in that line, again, could produce some isolated tornadoes. We'll keep an eye on that, but the timing looks very similar to the RPM, so we're pretty confident in the 10 p.m. to 11 midnight time period for it to be along 65, and then it moves out to the east. In fact, we switch more into a severe weather mode. It's more of a heavy rain potential as a low-level jet kicks in tonight. Really got to watch that for flash flooding. I would say from 65 eastward later tonight. Something to keep in mind, especially areas that picked up the heaviest of snow from that last snow event. The ground's very soggy still from that. All right, looking at the parameters, here is your surface-based CAPE. over the next few hours. It does build some into southern Kentucky, but a core to that again in west Kentucky where that tornado watch is in effect. Downdraft Cape, we're monitoring that for potential for an isolated downdraft if you get an isolated cell. These values are a little lower than what was indicated yesterday, so not too concerned about that. Wind shear, as I always say, anything over 40 is worth watching for severe wind potential, and you see nothing but 50 and 60 and 65. This is over the next 6 hours of wind shear over our heads. This is heading east. This model can't go past 6 hours, so just look at the clock, and by that point, it'll be over us, and that's why we're talking about the potential for wind damage. And over the next 6 hours, the best chance for supercells, again, pretty much where the tornado watch is, just to the west, so good watch placement has been found in that area as well. Again, I mentioned that moisture transport, a lot of moisture being funneled in right into West Kentucky. Not so much here in I-65 just yet, and that's why, again, a lot of these storms will become elevated and weaken as they approach us between now and 5 or 6. After 5 or 6, we are more primed for them to sustain themselves, and that's why we're talking about a mid to late evening event for the Louisville area. All right, that's how it stands right now. Not a major event by any stretch. Just be alert. If you have friends or family off to the west, we'll keep an eye on West Kentucky as these supercells get going, because, again, they do certainly have a higher tornado threat than we do here locally in wave country, but we're not entirely out of the woods when it comes to potential for wind damage and warnings to be issued. As far as the watch goes, again, that'll probably happen later on this afternoon to this evening. All right, stay tuned, guys. We're on it. We'll keep you updated. Keep an eye on that Wave 3 News weather app, too. We'll be sending out alerts right from our keyboard as we get new information coming in.